I don't know why that changed, because we were using it last night.
Yeah. Everything it seems like
Oh,
is that easier? Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Jamie. So welcome to this meeting, and we have apologies. Well, first we'll just triple check. Could all raise their hand that they can hear us okay? Yeah, yes. Yeah, okay, that's good. Thank you. Welcome to the meeting. Apologies. Do we have any apologies, Joe, from Mayor Lash?
Mayor Lash and Councillor Casson.
Mayor Lash and Councillor Casson are, I think, occupied with council business.
That's
So
right.
I'll move those two apologies be accepted. Seconded by Mayor Klein. All in favour? Aye. Thank you. Aye. Then we've got the agenda. I just note, looking at the agenda, that we've got attendance from the hearing commissioner, two of the hearing commissioners, I think, one in person and one online, when we get to that part of the agenda. Thank you. So then turning to the meeting, minutes of the meeting, 23rd of April, held at the West Coast Regional Council offices. Any comments as to accuracy of those minutes? Any amendments? And none, could somebody move those minutes be accepted as a true record of that meeting? Moved by Councillor Nayland, thank you. Seconded by Francois. I haven't heard from you today. Second, Heather. Thank you. All in favour? Aye. Carried. Aye. Thank you. Anything arising from those minutes not otherwise covered in the meeting? I don't think there is anything. Well, perhaps I should note we've had a response from MFE officials, and we've got that telephone conversation with them tomorrow, and I will circulate a note to mayors just to make sure that we're covering off various items when we have the opportunity for that discussion, but I'll be in touch outside this meeting. So we move to the first report, the delay in delivery of hearings panel recommendations, and I'd ask Joe Armstrong to introduce that. Over to you, please, Joe.
Thank you. And yes, as you mentioned, we have 3 members of the panel with us. I'm assuming you have Anton with you somewhere?
Oh, sorry, we've got Anton. Anton, can you come into view, please? So we've got
and online.
Anton and Chair Crystal, and
yes, and Mr. Rogers is also with us.
Yep.
Thank you for attending. Right, I'll jump ahead into this report then. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to start by just saying what a fantastic inclusive process this has been for TTPP across all the organisations that are involved, amongst the governance and the technical advisory team, so your planning staff. It's been a real hallmark of the project, and I think that because of this collaborative nature, the staff had really hoped to be able to share draft recommendations, reports with the committee and technical advisory team ahead of receiving the final report for the whole plan, because that's how we've worked the whole time. Now, I have said in the report that this isn't normal process for councils to get an early opportunity to view drafts. And when we approached the hearing panel, they had some misgivings about it, but they agreed to share early draft reports under a confidential process. We trialled that in April, but the hearings panel quickly advised Chair Williams that the process was adding to the complexity of their role and would severely delay delivery of the final report. And it was likely to be in the first week or 2 of August if they didn't have to accommodate the confidential process, and later if they did. So they've continued to work in their deliberations and writing recommendations reports on various topics, and have just recently advised staff that it's unlikely that the final recommendations report will be available until the 8th of September at the earliest. Now, this delay will obviously reduce the time available for TTPP committee members and technical advisory team to consider and for the decision making that's to be done prior to the 11th of October elections. Under the authority, though, that was delegated by the TTPP committee, the hearings panel has full control of the hearings process, which doesn't end until the recommendations report is delivered, and that includes the delivery date of the report. The panel's role is primarily to hear the submissions and make recommendations that are fair and impartial. So that's what they're spending the time making sure that they do in delivering really comprehensive recommendations to you so you can understand what's been heard as they've gone through. The contract does say that they should deliver the reports within 3 months of the final hearing, except by negotiation, and that's what all these conversations have been about. Having said that, though, there have been circumstances outside of the panel's control which have added to the workload and delayed the timing of the recommendations report. That includes time spent replacing an original panel member and a variety of committee decisions to delay the hearings of the ecosystems and biodiversity topic a couple of times and to add variations 1 and 2 into the hearing schedule. As we've introduced him, hearing panel Chair Dean Crystal's offered to tell you a bit more about the process that has already been undertaken by the panel and what the benefits are to the West Coast of a thorough hearings process, including getting a comprehensive recommendations report. So I'll just hand over to you. Thank you, Dean.
Kia ora everyone, and good morning. Hopefully you can all hear me. Look, I'll just sort of quickly run through where we're at and some of the issues that we're coming up against. So, look, it's been a complicated process and we are required to give consideration to all parties' evidence and their submissions, and we're trying to ensure that we capture that in the recommendations so that readers will fully understand why a recommendation has been reached. We're therefore covering what was sought by submitters and their evidence and what responses have been, including whether there have been any changes in views from the reporting officers, which often there have been through the hearing process as it's progressed. It's included at times the necessity to engage technical experts to address matters raised through submissions such as noise, natural hazards and landscapes, along with obtaining legal advice on occasions. All that has to go into the mix of our recommendations, where we're including reasoning for the recommendation reached and where they occur, the changes proposed, which are then highlighted in the text and include a reference to the submitter or submitters concerned. We have uncovered a number of errors in the plan as we've gone along, some of which have not been apparent until we've started drafting the recommendations. And where possible, we're correcting these through what's called Clause 16 of the RMA, which enables us to correct minor corrections of minor nature. And I have to say there are quite a lot of those. Integration between the chapters is significant. One change, particularly to say a definition, can reverberate across major sections of the plan. We've got a process in place with Lois Easton to identify these as recommendations are completed, but it's a big task and it requires at times us to revisit an existing recommendation because a change has come from a later recommendation. So that's all part of the integration process. I have to say that one section of the plan in particular has been very challenging so far because of the varying views of experts and the way that the Section 42A report was structured in the first instance. And we have had to spend a lot of time on that chapter. Many of the factors have only come to light as recommendations have been drafted, and at times we have had to seek further clarification on matters that arise, and in some cases that is still happening, and all of that takes time. And our recommendations are seeking to ensure that the plan is as integrated and robust as possible moving forward, and we hope that would result in fewer appeals at the end of the day. So that's sort of a bit of a summary of the reasons why it's taking time and where we're at the moment. I think we have sent through for so Lois, we've now got Lois reviewing recommendations. I think she's reviewed now 10 of them, and she sends her feedback to us, which we then go back through and check things. So that's the process that we're operating at the moment. So well, back to you, Joe. I don't think, unless any of the other commissioners got anything that they want to add to that. I don't know whether Paul or Anton want to add to that.
No, I think that's covered everything, Dean. Thank you.
Any questions on that for Commissioner Crystal? I see.
Oh, you know, I have a question.
Sure,
If Lois can see the revisions, why can't us on the committee see them? If Lois is allowed to revise what they're doing, why can't we do it?
She's not revising what we're doing. She's just reviewing what we're doing and pointing out if there are any errors.
Well, aren't we allowed to do that as well, or not?
It's typos
Have we
as
got
well.
no say in this?
Well, we are making recommendations to the TTP committee. So that's what we do. That's
what we are with the TTP committee. Why aren't you making us the recommendations?
We are. That's exactly what we're doing.
Where? You're going to give us a week in October to do it in the middle of an election. Why can't we start doing it now? That's my question. You've had 6 years, $10 million, and you expect us to revise all this in 1 week. It's ridiculous.
Well, we haven't had 6 years. We've been going for less than 2. If you want some context around that, other districts have taken even longer than that.
It just doesn't seem right. How can we do this in 1 week in October?
That's the decision of this committee to make with this paper.
If I can just chip in very briefly, the reason why we don't give out drafts and enter into discussion with your committee is simply that creates what's called a natural justice problem, in that before we reach our decision, if we invite others to influence that decision, that will leave the council wide open to a real risk of judicial review. It's really quite important that the correct process is followed so we don't end up creating a significant problem. So it's not part of the usual process to have open dialogue between a council committee and ourselves when we've been appointed to hear and decide and make recommendations.
So basically we have no say in the matter. That's what you're telling us, isn't it?
That's what I'm trying to put to you quite politely. The second point I would make to you is that while it seems, and to a degree will be, a daunting task for you to get your head around how our recommendations seek to change the notified plan, the key point I would make there is the form of delivery of our decision will include schedules which clearly detail where those changes lie. So you'll be able to compare the notified provision with a marked up provision of the same part of the plan. And you'll see from that very clearly and easily the changes. To understand why we've made those changes, you'll then be able to go back to our decision. In all cases, the changes that we are making to the plan are footnoted, so you can see where and how those changes arise. So it seems, well, it's going to be a process for you to go through, but the essence of it is a focus around the change in the plan provisions, which are clearly identified for you.
It's just disappointing that we had an agreement and then we've been told as a committee that that's not happening anymore, and we haven't had any voice or discussion. Like again with this plan, it just seems to be that, you know, as a committee we don't have any say anymore, and we're just there as sacrificial lambs to be told what to do really. So I think that's more the disappointment that has changed.
Well,
Staff the responsibility of that though, Paul, not the commissioners. That originally the TTPP committee has delegated this responsibility to the commissioners. So you have handed that responsibility over to get as far as these recommendations reports. And staff had thought that it would be fantastic if we could have the process that we discussed with the commissioners, and it just was going to be just too difficult a task in the end and push timelines out, as I've explained in my report, and that we take on our shoulders.
I think adding to Mr. Rogers' explanation of the process, an additional step that's in there as well is the ability for our technical teams at each council to take us through the changes as well, sort of one-on-one. They are planners, and so that I would think would be helpful as well to help us non-planners understand what the changes are and what has changed from the original notified plan. So yeah, it's going to be a big job, but I think that gives us some level of comfort that each district has its own planning team's eyes on the changes as well.
So just transfer here. So the recommendations are coming to who? Us?
So could you repeat that, Francois?
So the recommendations, are they coming to us?
They will.
So the recommendations going to be made.
Yeah.
Do we have, and they're going to be made to us, the panel, right? And then we make a decision from there, or yeah?
That's correct. But remember the paper that we had about the consequences of your decision making.
So we still have a part to play.
You certainly do. And
Yeah,
so appeals follow on from your decision as well, which extends your.
Yeah. I thought so. I thought things have changed just listening to the others. So okay.
So anybody else?
Yep.
Paul Medwick, your hand up, please. Yes, question from Paul Medwick.
Look, I understand the dilemma that the hearings commissioners are faced with here, and I certainly don't envy the task that you've got ahead of you on this. However, I mean, reading through this report for today, you know, I just find that it's unconscionable, really, that we're expected to make these huge decisions on an 800-page plan that's going to govern the whole future of the West Coast, and it's all crammed into like a week. It's just, you know, I mean, to get it straight, I mean, we granted more time for the hearings committee because they need it, and that's only fair. But it just seems that there's no latitude for us in this process. Look, I mean, just to me, it's just underscores my disillusionment with this process. You know, we started off with a lot of excitement about, you know, building a plan that's going to be by West Coasters, for West Coasters, and it was going to be a bespoke plan. But now it just seems that we've lost control. You know, we're going to end up in a rubber stamping role at the end of the process. I'm totally disillusioned.
Rex,
Yes.
through the chair.
Yes.
Yep, through the chair. Look, I've read right through the agenda, every item. I understand the difficulty the hearing commissioners have got in this process. It's a whole difficult process to go through. It would have been impossible for the committee members to hear those submissions and make the recommendations for this plan. And we gave, as a committee, that delegation to the commissioners to actually come up with a recommendation to us to make the final decision. Now, some councillors seem to be, or committee members seem to be a bit disillusioned on how the process works, but that is how it worked. We actually gave that delegation to, because the amount of work, and one of the questions I'm going to ask after my comments here is just how many hours you guys are putting in. It's phenomenal. The other point I'd like to make is that the plan was actually formulated by the committee members and the staff. And if there had been no objections or submissions, the plan would have been enacted and lawfully enacted, and it would have been in play now. So we've got the problem is we've got all the submissions were there. Every committee members had the opportunity of attending those hearings and listening, and also reading all the information of those. I've personally read the submissions and looked at what they've done. But I just want to remind councillors also that, or the committee members, that this committee actually requested a delay to this process on 2 occasions. And at that time, I warned of the effects and the cost of delaying the ecosystems and biodiversity hearings on both those occasions. So it was both time and cost. And here we are jammed in, like, I suspect it would happen right at time of elections. The problem with carrying on after it is you could end up with a whole lot of new people that think the TPP has something to do with the Polytech. And it's a really difficult plan, but I appreciate the effort that the commissions are putting in. And I've read that, you've been out and looked at different aspects of the plan, and looked at, and engaged and been down all over the coast and looking. So the question I've just got for the commissioners is, it's a thank you. It's a difficult job, but can you just give us a sort of an idea of the hours and time you guys are putting into this? Thank you. That's me.
Perhaps I can try and answer that. I think it's fair to say at the moment that all 5 commissioners are working pretty much 7 days a week. We are receiving and emailing each other every day, as far as I can tell. So at the moment, so it is a time-consuming process. I don't know, Paul, you've got anything, but I think it's pretty much how things are working at the moment.
Yep, no, I agree with that. It's the single task that all of us have got in front of us, and we're doing our level best to get the recommendations to you as soon as we possibly can. But it's a task that's awfully time-consuming. There's an immense amount of detail that needs to be sifted through, so the recommendations that we make to you make sense. Yep, that's all I can add.
And Paul, would you mind just clarifying that your recommendations can solely be based on submissions? So what that means? Yeah,
broadly that is correct. Obviously, we received a copy of the notified plan. We've received all the submissions which we've read. Then we have all the 42A reports, and then we have evidence received directly from people who have appeared in front of us and those who have just given us written material. All of that needs to be sifted through and weighed up to inform the recommendations we make. We have reply reports from officers. Sometimes we need to ask the officers to provide us with further information because there may be a lack of clarity around their views. So it's an ongoing process. I just make the point that, we are still receiving final reports, as it were. The notes from Joe, you've referenced there a report that was delivered to us on the 10th of June 2025. And these final reports are really quite significant because, they dovetail into the final issues, as it were. So they're quite important.
Thank you. Any further questions? Paul Medrick, do you have another question? Your hand signal.
Yep.
Yes,
just another comment through the chair. Thank Peter for the lecture before, but in fact we're pretty clear on that process, Peter. We know what we delegated to the Hearings Commissioners. The issue is that we're expected now to cram all this into a week. Basically, it's just unfair, and it's not going to be that's not going to get good decision making, in my view. That's the issue that I'm concerned about. As for the process, well, we know the difficulties that have been faced here. As I said before, I don't envy the job that the commissioners have had to do. But bear in mind as well that only a couple of meetings ago we were told what our process is going to be once the recommendations come back to us, and we're pretty much in a straitjacket as to how if we don't agree with a recommendation that comes back from the commissioners, our process is very, very limited. So, and that's not to say that this is peculiar to the Taipōtini plan. It's probably part of those the national rules that govern this whole thing about district planning. But it's just the public need to know that it's a very fraught process, and what we thought at the beginning that was going to be our plan has slipped away from us, in my view.
Hello?
Any other? Oh, yes, from Grey District Council. Yes, Councillor.
I 100% agree with Paul Medwick, and it seems to me like we're going to see the recommendations. We can't do anything about it, though. If we don't like it, it goes back to something else. We can't alter it. I'm really struggling to see the point of a committee. I know the commissioners have done a good job. I'm not criticising them at all. It's a massive job. But I do wonder if there wasn't enough time put in place for a start for them to go through it all. Was there enough backing with reports and time frames? I mean, if they're going to go over the time, I know it's not their fault. Whose fault is it? I mean, all this is costing, and that's just time ticking by. It's like the doomsday clock, I reckon.
Through the chair, if I could have one more quick comment there, Rex. I still believe the final decision is with the committee to make take the recommendation from the hearing commissioners, and we can change or make any final recommendation. The problem is that we open ourselves up for environment court attacks, so we open ourselves up. That is a problem. I like that clarified, but we can change anything if we don't like it. We'll take the recommendation, but the final decision still lays with this committee. But we do open ourselves up for influence from the environment court.
Oh, sorry. Been threatened with standing orders and legal opinions, the whole lot. We really can't change anything. That'd be right.
Yep. You got to remember, we were elected by the people to do this for them. We're in the community. We know what the community is looking for, and that's been taken away not only from us but from the community. The people who have to live by these rules that we're making, and try and prosper and try and make their region go forward.
What's the timeline with option 2?
Question there, but further comment, Mayor Klein?
So I'm hearing what everyone's saying. I think that there is a bit of a counter argument or thought is that delaying to the new year, we're then expecting potentially a completely new TTPP committee to then get their head around this entire plan, who have not seen it, not had anything really to do with it, because they're going to have to make a decision in January if this committee isn't prepared to put in the mahi to get this thing finalised. So I'll just lay that one out. Secondly, I think we're hung up a lot on the negative or perceived negative parts of TTPP. The further this committee delays getting a decision over the line, further delays rezoning of land that enables housing and development in our district, further constrains the mining, minerals and coal sector, further restrains sensible planning around hazard management and all the rest of it. That is all the good things that are in the plan that we would like to enable economic growth, encourage development and all the rest of it. All of that is on hold as well, don't forget, if we don't get the job done. Thirdly is further delay, as we've experienced with the delays we've had throughout the process over 5 or 6 years, is further cost. And it's further time, further reporting, further lots of legal advice for a new committee coming in that will need to be briefed and brought up to speed. I just think that it's important that we dig in and we put in the effort and understand and trust in the expertise of the commissioner panel who are providing recommendations to us. It's just they're the ones that have heard all of the evidence from the community, and they're the ones that are making adjustments in response to that where they can. And it's in my view pretty difficult for us to challenge that. Well, the recommendations of those committee members, of the panel members, not having sat through and heard all that evidence. I mean, that is natural justice 101. And so, I think that is the whole point of delegating it. It was a massive job, and they've sat through and done it. And that does constrain us to a certain degree around changes we could suggest, because your options will be to reset the process and sit through those hearings ourselves. And unless we're hearings commissioner qualified, it won't be us doing it anyway. So, so there's a whole big story around why that panel was delegated, and why I'm quite comfortable that their expertise comes back and reports to us, balanced by some local input from our own planning teams. And we just need to get the job done. Thank you.
I'd just like to say, Jamie, I'm not complaining about the job they're doing. All I'm complaining about is the time that we get to make a decision, and I cannot understand why they cannot release the information for us to go through and have a look at before we have to do it. I mean, it's just a time that we're not going to involve anybody or do anything. All we want to do is get our heads around and understand the decisions they're making and why they're making them. And I don't think I can do that in a week. I need a couple of weeks. So why can't you just release some of the information now so that we can see it? We saw the bit about the black petrol, so it was wrong. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there that possibly hasn't had a lot of local information put into it. We lived here all our lives. We know what's going on. If you asked us a lot earlier on about information, we probably could have made the whole thing a whole lot quicker, because we know what we want at the end of the day. But just excluding us and just making us trying to make a decision in a week, we need more time. We need more information. I don't want it to go into next year either, but I just can't see why you can't release some of the information now for us to go through and have a decent look at and talk amongst ourselves about it. We're not going to go to the public. We're not going to go to the paper. All we want to do is just have time to read it. I just can't see why that's such a problem, because we're not going to interfere or change anything. All we want to do is read it and understand it. You've got to remember that we've all got other jobs as well, We haven't been to university. We haven't been to wherever you guys have been. We want to have time to understand it. We're laymen. We're local people with local ideas, and we want to work locally. So I just can't see why you don't want to release some of the information early for us to have a look at.
Well, I think that Paul Rogers has explained that. Paul, do you want to again comment very briefly?
Well, I know he's explained it. It doesn't make it any easier for us, does it?
Okay. Okay, you accept the explanation. All right. Thank you. Are there any other comments? Paul Medwick, one more time.
Yeah, just further to what Jamie was saying, he's quite correct. Of course, 95% of this plan is good stuff, and there's only some bits that we're going to disagree on. But for me, it's option 2. It's about the time that we need to be allowed to make the final decisions. And for me, option 2 is it's not ideal. It's a little bit more of a delay. It's going to be a little bit more in cost. I'm not worried about the elections getting in the middle of that. I mean, we've had mayors and councils change since this process began, and the sky hasn't fallen in yet. I think we can do it, but all I'm asking for is option 2. Give us a little bit more time. Thank you.
Okay, we'll get on to that discussion. I just want to draw this part of the discussion to an end. That is the attendance with the hearing commissioners. So I think we've heard from them, and there's been a good opportunity to ask questions and make comments around that. So I think we can move on from their involvement. Happy for them, obviously, to stay in the meeting, but if we could move to the options that are being presented in the paper on page 9, the 2 options with respect to the timing of the decision making, and asked for comment initially from Joe Armstrong, and then perhaps Darryl Liu, if appropriate, you might comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I will look at these 2 options which you've started to discuss already. The first being that the current TTPP committee approves and notifies the decisions version of the plan on or before Friday the 10th of October. I will note that that does give the committee in TAT approximately 2 to 3 weeks, so probably 2.5 or so weeks to consider the recommended changes to each chapter. And the importance that's been mentioned before about working with your technical advisory team on that as well, to make sure we will work with them, staff will work with them first to make sure that they understand. So if we look at the timeline, if we receive the recommendations report on the 8th, staff would need a little bit of time to complete a track changes version for you and the summaries of any changes. So then they would come as quickly as possible out to the TTPP committee and technical advisory team members. Then staff would work with the TAT for at least a couple of days to work through the major changes there. Looking at having a full workshop on, then it's really important that you spend some time with your TAT members, but then for us to come together with all the staff and committee members by the 19th of September to have a workshop. Now, the next line down where I've said full day decision meetings, 22nd of September that week, that is likely to be more like maybe have a couple more days of workshop where we're really working through the nuts and bolts of it, and then have a decision meeting once you're you fully understand the implications of the recommendations. So there's a bit of leeway for that in there as well. But as I have explained in the paper there, I do need, it's not quite 10 days there that I've got to get map books printed and print off copies of the reports to get all the notification information out to the public. So that limits the timing somewhat as well. But if you, whatever option you select, staff can arrange full day meetings, half day meetings where it's not going to work, and just get as many in as we can in that pre-election time, and hopefully you won't be too, as busy in that pre-election time. So option 2 is that any new committee members would have to come up to speed. So that would also require a bunch of workshops looking at what was there before the recommendations were made, so they can understand the plan and then move on to the recommendations section. And I've put that realistically the decision would need to be made before the Christmas break. So we're not even really talking mid-January, because then printing still has to occur, and we need to actually be ready to notify in the middle of January. I think apart from our two constraints with time of the local body elections and the Minister for the Environment's deadline of the 14th of January, we also have to consider the protocols for this pre-election period that we'll be moving into shortly. And so perhaps it would be good if the Chief Executive West Coast Regional Council did cover off a little bit about the protocols in light of the TTPP process, as opposed to what happens for your councils, but specifically for TTPP. Are you comfortable to do that, Mr. Liu?
Yes, thanks, and good morning, everybody. Just some comments from me, really, and some advice. Firstly, I just want to reiterate under option 1 what Joe has advised. It's actually 2 to 3 weeks is the time frame actually that you'll get to read and contemplate and decide. But even at 2 to 3 weeks, let alone 1 week, it's still a very, very pressure cooker time. And for those councillors, you know, that do have, you know, your normal jobs and things, you know, the time you're going to have to create, you know, and have time away probably from work, etc., to actually dedicate to doing all the work is going to be immense, and it's a challenge, and I don't envy that challenge. What I would say though, and this is really a commentary for you, Dean, and your fellow commissioners, you know, any advance that you can give the joint committee members and get the decisions, the recommendations, sorry, to the joint committee earlier than what is in the timetable here would just actually relieve some of that pressure cooker. And look, I know the immense job that you've got on, but as you can hear today, any advance and earlier release of those recommendations in their entirety, given integration, all those sorts of things, is going to actually, you know, be an immense relief to this situation. And can I also say, you know, I've done your job in previous life. I know what it is, but just please recognise that I know there is probably a big temptation to get the thing perfect before you release, or you know, have everything is ironed out that you can absolutely see, but it will then go into the joint committee for decision making, and they're probably going to make some changes. So there's always that opportunity for staff and joint committee to employ the section of the Act for minor corrections and do that anyway at that point. And then inevitably on these sorts of processes, there will be appeals, and then all bets are off again, and the whole thing could, you know, or big portions of it will be tested again, and that whole plan integration and those sorts of things needs to be gone through again. So just be realistic about, you know, the changes that are still to go on after you release it, and the work that will be done there. In terms of some other comments that I've been asked to make this morning, it's just advice to the joint committee, really. And the 4 chief executives have been in touch over email over this, and there's some advice floating around, but I'm just really conscious of our 2 iwi members as well. So it's on the topic of predetermination and politicisation of the process. So what I would say is that my advice to you is, as a joint committee, you are quasi-judicial. I think that's the correct term, quasi-judicial, which means that for all intents and purposes, you're acting like an environment court set of judges, basically. And the analogy that I would give you is that if a judge who was hearing a case, which is what you're doing here, made commentary in media, down the pub, or to colleagues or something outside of the process, in terms of what you want to do or what you think should happen and that sort of thing, that could be classed as what they call predetermination. And what that would create, and please, this is standard practice for particularly those very organised appellants that may be looking to appeal here and crimp the process, is they will be looking for any evidence of predetermination that they can find, either formally or informally, and they will take that through either judicial review or through the Environment Court. If predetermination is proven, or politicisation and commentary around all of that through this process from here to when you make the decision, then the decisions can be in full or in part become invalid. And then it's up to the judge to decide what to do about that. And I don't think, that's worth contemplating, because that's just, just inconceivable in terms of what that would actually mean. So the advice that I'm discharging to you, and the 4 chief executives have got this advice and been talking on the email and circulating the right, technical advice documents here. So please, mayors and chair, and Francois and Paul, if you want any more information, Chair Haddock, but also Paul and Francois, you can come to me. The mayors can go to the relevant chief executives. We do have some documentation around what to do, but the advice is, please, you cannot say anything publicly around the substantive matters that you're going to decide on until you decide. Otherwise, it does endanger the process. I'm presuming that to varying extents that the joint committee members know that, but I was asked to just reiterate that, get that recorded in the minutes, that's the advice to you. Thank you.
Can I ask a question, Rex?
Yes, please.
I mean, Mayor Klein has said about the things that we really need, the good parts of the plan, which I totally understand. The zoning and people are waiting for development and everything. Has the committee not got enough power to bring some of that stuff forward to at least get that through, to get the ball rolling? I mean, and it's not controversial, some of that stuff. It's not like the sea level rise or the mining or anything like that. This is just everyday work to rezone some of the land. Why can't we do that? Just remind me again if I don't know, please.
Well, from my off-the-cuff comment, it's to do with the integration of the whole plan. I mean, the whole plan relates, various chapters and sections relate to each other, and it's the total integration of that whole document which the hearing commissioners are working on at the moment, and releasing one part which may subsequently be altered would be the problem. And I think that's the issue that has been highlighted in the discussion so far. So I think it's the...
We don't know what's been decided on yet. No. It's just holding the whole process up, Rex. I mean, you can't tell me zoning's affected by sea level rise or anything like that. It's I'm not too sure what would come off zoning, how it can be integrated and all the other stuff. These are separate things that people applied for that are waiting and can't do it till this committee decides on the zone.
Yeah, I'm from the chair. I'm not making any further comments on that. I've explained what I think the situation is.
Well, I fully agree with what Daryl's saying, but predetermined is a very hard one to interpret, because the people elected us because they know what our predetermined ideas are. That's why they didn't elect me because I'm forest and bird or anything like that. They know what I'm for, and they expect me to vote the way I vote, and that's why people get elected. That's what they call democracy. So it's very hard to say you're not allowed to have any predetermined ideas, because a lot of my ideas were installed in me by my grandfathers about how things go and natural justice and all this sort of stuff. It's very hard not to be predetermined. So we're really can't do anything, can we? It's just coming down to a nothing.
I think my comment, well, actually, I'll turn to Councillor Nayland. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, this process is not a democratic process. I think it was said before there's a quasi-judicial process, and what we're expected to do is come in with an open mind, not an empty mind, but certainly an open mind. So, you know, predetermination is a really, really serious factor, and just reiterate, it's not a democratic process. It's a quasi-judicial. We've passed a democratic process. I'm just wondering, in terms of where we're trying to get to, if we were to go with option one, and we do a bit of suck and see, if you like, so we start this process prior to the election. If we get into it for a couple of days, is there an option for us to then delay it and go to option two? Because you know, we simply find the task way in excess of what time we've got left, and that we just simply hand it over to option two. And you know, there will be some changes, but I think, as Joe said, you know, those election results will be out about the 15th of October, 16th of October, around that, October. So there's quite a bit of time there between you know, that date and when we're due to have it finalised by the 14th of January. So I think we should start off with good intentions of option one, and if need be, if we find it too onerous, that we just simply carry on after the election, and there will be some briefing required for new members, but that's just part and parcel of the process.
Thanks, Councillor.
Through the chair, I fully agree with Councillor Nayland. I think we're better off to, this committee knows more about the plan than anyone. And I think, you know, we've got that 3-week time frame set in there, looking at on page 9, it's been set out there, timing for option one. And I think we should get in and do it. That's my opinion. I agree with Councillor Nayland. If it runs over, well, but you would get a lot of it heard and you'll get a lot of the work out. Remembering that after the elections, you've got staff and new councillor inductions and familiarisation with their own councils. It'll be flat out sort of time. Then you've got the crazy Christmas time coming up, and I'm pretty sure no one will want to be working from the week before Christmas right through Christmas till the 14th of January. So I think you're better, me personally myself, I think I'd rather put the effort in, and if it takes a couple of weeks to get as much done, if we run out of time, it carries on. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments before I ask for somebody to move the recommendation, which is on page 10, paragraph 32? I see the staff recommendation regarding option one. So is somebody prepared to move in that direction?
Yeah, I'll move option one.
Councillor, you're
I'd like
moving,
to move option one.
moving option one. Thank you. Anybody second that? Seconded by Chair Haddock. Thank you. Any further discussion? There is none. I'll put the motion. All in favour say aye.
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 Against?
Well, I'm against.
I'm against.
Francois is against.
Yeah, I'm against.
Is against.
Through the chair, you put that rather quickly. We didn't have a chance to even unmute our buttons.
I asked for any further comments.
Yeah, and as I was trying to unmute you, you put the motion and the next thing passed. Where's the discussion?
Sorry, Paul. It's one of the difficulties with these online meetings. I thought that I asked for any further comments, so I didn't notice that your hand was up. So any further comments before we won't pass the movement. So Paul, you wanted to comment?
Yes, I do have a comment. Thank you, through the chair, and that is that option one doesn't give us the extra option that was raised by Graham Naylon, and that we could start this and suck it and see, basically, because it'll become quickly apparent whether or not this is doable. And if it's not doable, then I think we would be foolish to carry on and make bad decisions in a very short time frame. And so that at that point, we as a committee should have the latitude to be able to go to option 2, which is to give more time. So this just blithely moving through option 1 doesn't give us that latitude. So I'm opposed.
Thank you.
That's the exact reason I'm opposed to it. It got thrown out the door, wasn't discussed. So I'm against option 1, unless we can redo it to what Councillor Nayland suggested.
Okay, but I've heard those comments. I'll come back to the motion. I had put the motion that had been moved and seconded concerning the adoption of the staff recommendation of paragraph 32. I'll just put that motion again. All in favour?
Through the chair,
Yeah.
I'd like to make an amendment to that motion.
Thank you.
I'd like to make an amendment to that, and that it is the option 1. It reads: staff recommend option 1 is current TPP committee members knowledgeable about the TPP and the combined plan process to date, placing them in the best position to make decisions. It'll carry on early decisions, but also allow more enabling plan. And I'll add on the option is if it cannot be decided by the committee by the due date of the 10th of October, that it will carry on following the local body elections, and be notified before the 14th of January. This is the date. Happy to move that amendment.
Thank you. Anybody
Just happen anyway.
second that amendment? And yep, Councillor. Sorry, is that Councillor Gibson? Yeah.
Councillor Cummings.
So, Councillor Cummings. Any discussion about the amendment?
I think it'll just naturally move on to that anyway, so quite happy with it.
Mayor Klein?
Thank you. Happy to support the amendment, but noting that this committee at any time can move a resolution to extend or adjourn or whatever and get the support of the committee. So in my view, the original option was fine, because if we ran out of time, it's a simple resolution by vote to extend, but comes that off, so I'm happy to support.
Oh, thank you. I think the amendment covers the feeling of the meeting. Yes, Councillor. Yeah.
Do we get to have a decision on what the schedule is for the different chapters?
Could we, rather than get into that sort of a detail, I think that's something we can pick up later, unless it's going to affect how you vote on this particular matter.
Right.
I prefer to keep it simple and be very clear about what we're voting on, which is the staff recommendation of para 32 as amended by the amendment put forward by Chair Haddock. So I'd like
by Councillor Cummings.
Yep. Seconded by Councillor Cummings. Yep. I'll put that amended motion.
Well, sorry, through the chair, I did have my hand. So I just wanted to clarify. I think the amendment is what we've all been asking for there. But I just wanted to make sure, so that doesn't commit us to go to the end of that option 1 process and then realise, wow, we can't do this. So then we recast it as extending. So if it becomes apparent after only a few days that this task is beyond that short time frame, then we have the option to delay. Is that correct?
From the chair, my comment is that's correct, and I think that's the point that Mayor Klein was making, that This committee is totally in charge of its own procedures and processes, and the feeling of the meeting is to move to option one, noting that an extension may be available. So this decision is not going to cut off that option at any time. So I'd like to come back to put the motion as amended. All in favour? Aye.
Aye.
Against? Is that against, or is that a delayed hand? I think all in favour. I think that's unanimous. Thank you. The motion is passed.
Unanimously.
Now, did anyone have any other comments about that paper? In which case, I'll just thank the hearing commissioners for their attendance and for their involvement in today's meeting. Thank you for that's been helpful. Thanks. I'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the financial report. Back to Joe Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nothing unexpected in the report to the 30th of April. Expenses are running ahead of the year-to-date budget. That continues. Consultants, the expense has been reducing as the hearings are complete, but previously signalled consultant planners were still undertaking the mineral extraction and coastal hazard topics, with final reports only delivered in June as discussed. So this cost then should decrease into the new financial year prior to appeals, when we will be utilising further planning resources. The budget for the hearing commissioners was set too low, as we've been mentioning since last year, and in April their fees totaled $143,000, and that's likely to increase at the rate that they're working at the moment through till the recommendations report. 2026 budget at the moment draft. I haven't heard that that's been accepted yet. For the hearings commissioner item, it was originally calculated when we thought we would receive reports in June, which is as we'd planned when we started this process. So I'd put a small budget in for the 2026-2027 year, just in case there were overruns into July. And then when it looked like the delivery date was going to extend into August, the committee approved an increase to that item in the draft budget. But if there are further delays, it's just going to mean increases of budget, and it's likely to result in an exceedance of the budgeted amount for the 2026-2027 year before we even get started on that. You'll see that the two tables are below the report on pages 13 and 14. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about the report or the tables.
Thank you. Questions concerning the financial report?
I have a question, not really about the financial report. I'm just wondering, who are they consulting with in the minerals extraction?
Planners. So they're...
You're consulting with anyone from the minerals sector?
There's always been... Yes. In fact, the reason that this was extended in the mineral extraction topic was that the commissioners asked the planner to go back and specifically talk to people whose properties had been in their draft report, saying they were going to take the mineral extraction or take the zoning off. So it gave them an additional opportunity to provide the required details about their licenses and permits and things like that. So
you didn't talk to anyone in the minerals extraction industry?
We've talked to a lot of people in the mineral extractions industry, and those people with the properties are generally the mineral extractions people. And so that all had to be included, updated into the report.
How many email was asked?
Any further questions on the finance report? If none, can someone move the report be received? Moved by Paul Medrick, seconded by Matt Klein. All in favour? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Turning to the project manager's update.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay.
Jo.
It's a very short report and I'm happy to take it as read, but if you've got any questions, happy to answer those.
Any questions on the? No. Perhaps I could move that the manager's update be received, and Mayor Gibson, are you happy to second that? Thank you. All in favour? Aye. Thank you.
Aye.
Carried. I think that completes the meeting. Oh, sorry, Mick Line.
Just a question, with the decision made around timing for recommendations coming back, can we make sure we get those calendar invites and plans in everyone's diaries ASAP? Joe and the team, so not already.
Yes.
Pick that up, Joe.
I'll start that conversation with the EAs at the councils today.
You there, Rex? Lost the chair.
Sorry, I was talking to myself there. I was just emphasising the importance of locking those dates in with the commitments the committee members have got. Yeah, my apologies for talking to myself. Any other questions or comments? No, if there are none, I'll declare the meeting closed. Thank you.